What's up, Jess?
So
What's up, fellas?
what's good, my boy? Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, y'all.
There she go.
Good
morning.
Every week. Good morning, Mom. Good morning. So, welcome to episode 50. That's pretty dope. Not quite 100, but we got 50 of them so far. After the day, another team meeting where we're here to distract you from your current story, dismantle your current belief systems, and inspire you to change your mind, which then will inspire you to change your life. Game 7 social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Game 7 shop, where you can get all your Game 7 apparel. Our mission is to serve. So whenever you all see us on social media, please hit that thumbs up and please make sure you share. The more people we can get in front of, the more people we can help. So last week, we talked about maybe not how, but the data about how Black people marry the least, we divorce the most, and while we're marrying the least, we're also the most rapidly increasing race that marries outside of our race. All right. So we talked about commitment and we went through a bunch of data. This is all from last week. That's why I'm clicking through it. But today we're going to have part 2. And I'll tell you why, because it kind of happened organically. If I can get through all these. All right. So I think it's the next one. All right, boom. So some more numbers. So me to the group chat this week, Kevin Samuel said the divorce rate for African Americans is 60%, and 90% are filed by women. And for divorces overall, 80% are filed by women. All right. So the divorce rate for African Americans in our country is over half, right? 60%. And 90% of those cases are filed by women. But then for every American, 80% of the divorces are filed by women. So all right. So I put that in the group chat. And in a response from a friend, I ain't no snitch. I'm not saying who it was. He or she said, and they be the main ones complaining about prenups. All right. So the data says that women are the far majority to file for divorce. And then the friend said, and a lot of other friends had some comments to follow up, that women are the ones who more or less don't want to sign a prenup, right? Because they know they're going to leave, and they know they're going to take some significant portion of the earnings from the couple. So what I decided to do is not just to take his word for it. I said I'm going to do some research because I want to know how true or not true this is. So boom, let's see what the numbers say. So at the 110th annual meeting of the American Sociological Association, the author of the study on marriage and divorce, Michael Rosenfeld, an associate professor of sociology at Stanford University, said that his studies found the following information. So this is from the American Sociological Association on a study ran by a Stanford professor. So women initiated basically 70% of all divorces compared to 31% for men. In contrast, there was not a statistically significant difference between the percentage of breakups initiated by unmarried men and women, regardless of whether they have been living together. All right. So the breakup rate, divorce rate for a married couple, the far majority is women. But the breakup rate, divorce rate for who initiates the breakup is pretty much even when you're not married. All right. So that's a unique piece of data. Social scientists have previously argued that women initiate most divorces because they are more sensitive to relationship difficulties. Rosenfeld argues that if this were true, women would initiate the breakup of both marriages and non-marital relationships at equal rates. Makes sense. So if women are super sensitive to difficulties, they would leave at equal rates in a married relationship or unmarried relationship. Good point. So clearly something's different about marriage. Perhaps women were more likely to initiate divorces because, as Rosenfeld found, married women reported lower levels of relationship quality than married men. In contrast, women and men in non-marital relationships reported equal levels of relationship quality. So we'll use the general relationship, I guess, if I could say that. But typically the man and the woman in a non-married relationship, they have equal quality in terms of their perspective. But then that quality falls for women once they're married, right? So maybe he changed after marriage, maybe she changed after marriage. Something changes to where the quality changes in the perspective of a woman. His results also supported the feminist assertion that some women experience heterosexual marriage as oppressive or uncomfortable. I think that marriage as an institution has been a little bit slow to catch up with the expectations for gender equality. Wives still take their husbands' surnames and are sometimes pressured to do so. Husbands still expect their wives to do the bulk of the housework and the bulk of the childcare. On the other hand, I think that non-marital relationships lack that historical baggage and the expectations of marriage, which makes the non-marital relationships more flexible and therefore more adaptable to modern expectations, including women's expectations for more gender equality. Right? So just like last week when we talked about the relationship and income difference was 87% between men and women. So over the years, this was black men and women. Black women having increased like this, and women just stayed there. And typically, in the typical marriage relationship, as it's been through most of time, it's like the man is the leader and the woman supports. He takes care of us, she takes care of him. Not in like a slavery way, but like the woman is the nurture, the support, and the man's supposed to be the leader in the front, you know? Now he has to earn that, and their relationship has to learn to find that balance. But it's saying it ain't that no more. We the same, right? That's what they mean by that gender equality. There's like no more gender roles. It's whatever works in our relationship is whatever works. And the next study goes deeper into that. So essentially, women are more likely to leave when they're married because the quality of the relationship goes down, and gender roles is a big role in that. That's the all in all of that study. So, women are more likely to feel that marriage is holding them back. Research consistently shown that women still do more housework than men, even if both parties work full-time jobs. For example, a 2019 report by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics found that basically 50% of women did housework on a daily basis versus only 20% of men, even if they were both employed. That indicates that there's still a lack of equality regarding domestic labor within the average American household, and it's a gap that might make marriage seem less advantageous for a woman who is career oriented. Right? So the same kind of demands 9 to 5 is no longer just the man going out, getting the money, bringing it home. It's normally a one man, one woman game, right? A 2-man game in terms of the relationship. But then when we come home, the woman still has all of these womanly expectations. Like I know a lot of men who don't cook. I know a lot of men who don't clean. I know a lot of things like that. Now, one powerful thing I know, me and Josh had a unique time in our relationships, and we were having like a man-to-man talk. And I'll never forget. He's like, Mark, you no disrespect, but like you got a lot of womanly qualities. I was like, yo, it makes sense because I'm just like my mom. You know, like I clean all the time. I'm very, very organized. I cook, like a lot of things that the general woman would do. But I was always around my mom, and I'm like my mom with my father's intensity, you know? So it makes sense. So a lot of these things don't really apply to me. But I know for sure a lot of men who don't cook, don't clean, and their women does everything, So I can relate to that. And then Kevin Samuels always does. He's like, "Yeah, you love your career or you gonna love your man." And speaking from personal experience, like the higher up a woman is, in my experience that I've worked alongside and I've seen, a lot of them are single. I don't know what's happened in their lives, but a whole lot of them are single. So if the wife makes more money but is still expected to do more of the housework and childcare, what's the point? Asked Anita Chilapala, a licensed marriage and family therapist and author of First Comes Us, The Busy Couple's Guide to Lasting Love. On top of that, some women are in a difficult situation of not being supported by their husbands when they find success in the workplace. One 2019 study of over 6,000 American heterosexual couples published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin even found that many men experience psychological distress if their wives begin to make more money than them throughout the course of their marriage. If a woman feels like her husband is threatened by her success or is holding her back from professional advancement and feels pressure to take on the bulk of the household and childbearing responsibilities on top of that, she may want out of her marriage, right? That's just a weak dude. Like, why would you not want your wife or your girlfriend to make as much money as possible? But I can relate from the general, once again, gender roles perspective. But just get your bread up, bro. Or she just extremely gifted and she bringing in money to the household. So this was a study of 115 other studies from some family law attorneys in California. They collected a whole bunch of data from 2020. So as of 2016, both marriage rates and divorce rates in the US are decreasing. Recent studies have shown that millennials, our age, are choosing to wait longer, like Jess was saying last week, not necessarily to wait longer, but take the time to wait longer to get married. And now they're staying married longer and are the main driver in both the decline of the marriage and the divorce rates. All right, so millennials, they're taking longer to get married, so there's less marriages, but also there's less divorces because they're staying together. Almost 50% of all marriages in the US will end in divorce or separation. All right, so every 1 out of 2, not African Americans, everybody in this country, half the time you're not going to make it. 60% of second marriages end in divorce, and 70% of all third marriages end in divorce. I thought that was crazy. It's like the more you get married, the more likely you are to get divorced. Like you would think you would learn from the first or the second time. Over a 40-year period, 67% of marriages terminate. So over the last 40 years, 7 out of 10 don't make it. The average age for couples going through their first divorce is 30. That's a big one for me. The average age for couples going through their first divorce is 30. 30. And like people grow or people don't grow. Like those 20 to 30s. Like I totally get it now when Jay-Z said 30 is the new 20. Like the world is different. Like you're not really developing as a man until, or I don't know about a woman, but as a man until like your 20s, you know? And you can fall for this woman or fall for this man in your 20s. And then you go through life and you grow. Like you're a totally different person and he or she doesn't. Or he or she does grow and you grow apart, you know? People got to have time to develop. So people are divorcing on average at the age of 30. If both you and your partner have previous marriages, you are 90% more likely to get divorced than if this was the first time. So if you're going into your second marriage, you're 90% more likely to get divorced if both partners have been divorced before. 60% of couples that live together will eventually marry. However, living together prior to marriage can increase the chance of getting divorced by as much as 40%. I thought that was pretty unique too. I thought it would be the other way around. The risk of divorce is almost double, 97% higher, when the mother went out to work, but her husband made a minimal contribution to housework and childcare. Right? Although there's a gender role dispute, clearly, if you're not like a man to your woman, you're not bringing in what needs to be brought in as a man, she gone. You feel me? Basically all the time. But why would you marry a dude like that? I don't understand that part. And 43% of the children in the U.S. are being raised without their fathers. 43% of the children, this is not African Americans, this is American. 43% of children in the U.S. are being raised without their fathers. 43%. 43%. So here's some feedback. And Mace, jump in here with me if things come to your mind as I go through this. So how do you know if you can trust the person you marry to uphold their commitment? So let's talk about what trust is, right? So trust, choosing to make something important to you vulnerable to the actions of someone else. Like marriage is like the ultimate trust move, right? Making yourself vulnerable to the actions of someone else. Distrust, when something important that I share with you is not safe with you. Trust and distrust. So making yourself vulnerable and like kind of putting yourself in someone else's hands. So trust is made up of the following components, and this is from some studying I did on Dr. Brene Brown. So boundaries. I trust you if you are clear about your boundaries and you hold them, and you are clear about my boundaries and you respect them. Clearly, that's something that people are not doing before they hop into these relationships, and then they separate so frequently, right? There's some boundaries not being set and some boundaries not being broken. Some boundaries being broken. Reliability. I trust you if you are clear about your boundaries and you hold them, and you are clear about my boundaries and you respect them. From boundaries, I can trust you to do what you say you're going to do, and this is not once. This must be done over and over and over again. Reliability means that you can be very clear on your limitations so that you don't take on so much that you come up short and don't deliver on your commitments. That's a big one for marriage. You got to be very clear on your limitations so you don't set yourself up for failure, right? Oh, I'm gonna marry you, but I need you to make 100 G's. Yo, bro, if you only averaging 50 G's your whole life, you probably not gonna make that 100 unless something changes about you first. Then she's gonna leave you, right? Or you a woman on the other side, and you've been upholding. You do all the laundry, you do all the cooking, and you do all of the house stuff, but you're expecting it to change. No, if he's never been in the laundry room, he's probably not gonna go there, right? So don't set yourself up for failure. Next, accountability. I trust you if you are willing to own it, apologize, and make amends when you make a mistake. And I trust you if I'm allowed to own it, apologize, and make amends when I make a mistake. Right? That's something that KG was referring to last week. He's like, yo, if I make a mistake, certain women I've dealt with, like, they own me, but I've dealt with other women and like I can make a mistake and come back from it, right? That's a big one. Mistakes are going to happen, but you got to own it as an individual and allow your partner some grace to own up for it. Vault, right? This is the typical definition of trust. What I share with you, you're going to keep it. And what you share with me, I'm going to keep it, right? That's one big thing where people say, keep your relationship. Don't let it get out the house. Once it starts to get out the house, that's when you know there's issues. If a friend comes to me and says, oh my God, did you hear about so-and-so? They got this going on. I'm pretty sure they got that going on. This friend just gave you some information that wasn't theirs to share, right? And now you can't trust that person because they're showing you that they take somebody else's secret information and share it with you. People often share things with friends that aren't theirs to share in an effort to hotwire a connection with those friends. Some relationships are built on talking bad about other people. This is known as enemy intimacy, right? You see that on social media all the time when everybody joking about this person or this lady made that mistake, this man made that mistake, right? You ain't got no friends, so y'all all join in on making the other person feel bad. And that's a sign of a weak relationship because it's built on a weak foundation. Integrity. I cannot trust you if you do not act with integrity and encourage me to do the same, right? Choosing courage over comfort, not taking the easy way out, doing what's right over what's fun, right? When you go out Friday night with your boys and she look pretty and you know you ain't supposed to be doing something, but you do something, and then your homies try to keep it a secret, right? You're not acting with integrity. Like that's a bad sign. You gotta do what's right, do what's good for the long run over what's good for the moment. And two more. Non-judgmental. This is a big one. I can fall apart. I can ask for help. I can struggle without being judged by you. And you can do the same and I won't judge you. This is difficult for some people because we're often better at helping others than asking for help. Sometimes we think we have a trusting relationship with people who really trust us because we're always there to help them. But if you can't ask for help on the other side and they cannot reciprocate that ability to help, this is not a trusting relationship. Like I've seen this, I don't know if this is true overall, but like a lot of women who get with dudes who not up to par, and they feel like they turn into a son instead of a man. Like this is that kind of thing right there. When you assign value to needing help, when you think less of yourself for needing help, whether you're conscious of it or not, when you offer help to someone else, you think less of them too. You cannot judge yourself for needing help, but not judge others for needing help. Some people get value in a relationship from being the helper. They think that's their worth. But real trust does not exist unless help is reciprocated and non-judgmental. So this means, Jess always says it, your relationship has to be equally yoked. You know, like one person can't hold 60% of the weight and the other person holds 40, right? It's just not fair. Now, how y'all find that in your relationship, that's up to y'all. But a lot of times, one person is keeping everything together and the other person has way more leeway to rock the boat than the other person. And generosity. A relationship is only a trusting relationship if you can assume the most generous thing about my words, intentions, and behaviors and then check in with me. So if I mess up, say something, or forget something, you will make a generous assumption and give me the benefit of the doubt, right? So number one, what that means is like, say she's been texting you and you haven't responded. If she's generous with her thoughts, all right, maybe he's in a meeting. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he's on the phone with his mom. Maybe he's working out, right? Being generous, right? And then when you talk, yo, what happened? Oh, my fault, my phone died. Or my fault, I was in the gym, whatever the case may be. Or instead of you just snapping because he's not answering his phone, you think he's cheating, you think he's ignoring you, you think you're doing something, right? That's not being generous with your thoughts. That's not really trusting, right? So once again, giving the person the opportunity to mess up, and then you amend it when the time comes. So all in all, being clear with your expectations and not setting yourself up for failure is what trust is. So one of the biggest casualties with heartbreak, disappointment, failures, and struggles is not just the loss of trust in other people, but the loss of trust in yourself. All right, this is huge. Like a lot of people jump into relationships because they're literally feeding off of the other person, right? As opposed to like, yo, I'm cool here, you're cool here, let's come together. And that's not a good thing to like really live through another person. So you don't trust yourself unless you love yourself, right? And if you can't count on yourself, you can't ask other people to give you what you don't have. You can't ask people to give you something that you don't believe you're worthy of receiving. You'll know you're worthy of receiving it when you trust yourself above everyone else, right? So all in all, you got to be whole. You got to be healed when you get into a relationship, because if not, you feel it's like you're on a team. If the running backs, the linemen, and the quarterbacks are doing good, but the receivers ain't good, the whole team loses, right? Or the big man on the basketball court is cooking, but the guards keep turning it over, the whole team loses, right? So in order to have the best team, everybody has to be on their job when you come to the team. Just like a relationship. If you got things to heal them, then get into a relationship, right? Or if you're in a relationship already and both of you notice or one of you notice that you have to heal, both of y'all have to dive into that, because eventually it's going to rupture the relationship. So that was a lot. I know. I hope y'all wrote down key points or things y'all heard. Let's just go down the line. KG, Pizzle, Mace, Just.
Yeah, that was a lot to digest. A lot of good information. A lot of good numbers. And to me, what really stuck out was the point, like 30 years old. Like I'm 30 right now, right? And that's tough, right? And a lot of people go through their first divorce at 30, and then oftentimes, in today's society, a lot of people do the marriage thing, as a facade, as a way to be accepted into culture right away, because that's what society says that you have to do. You got to hurry up and get married but it may not be your time. It may not be right for you. And that's huge for me because, you just see it. So many people getting married so early, and kudos to them. If they're prepared for that and they're ready for that, that's totally fine. But for me, I believe in, as we seen as men, we know that like before 30, it's a lot of learning. You still have to learn as a man. As just said last week, a lot of people have this tendency to rush, but the more time you take to learn yourself first, and allow time to learn your partner, will give you the opportunity to be the most successful when it comes down the line. So that part was pretty crucial to me. Also, the part was, I would expect, after you have that first marriage, I would expect your success rate to go higher, but it actually is the other way around, and that is extremely interesting to me because usually when you have experience doing something for a little bit, the next time you get into that experience, you're going to be a little better. So what that says to me, when the numbers go up, people have less tolerance that second or third time coming around, right? Like something that they might have gone let go for like a year or 2 years in their first marriage. If they see that sign in the second or third marriage, they're out of there quickly. So that's a sign of knowing their worth, knowing what's not for them. But I also think that's in terms of especially millennials, I also think that's us, just having a little bit of control over our own narrative, right? Because when you see it, our generation, the millennials, are the ones who are taking the longest to marry. Why? Because think about this. If so many people got divorced in the past, look at how many people are traumatized by that notion, right? So when someone gets divorced, that trickles down to the kid. So their experience changes, right? So they're not going to want to get married right away because, one, they have to heal themselves first. They have to get over that trauma of seeing their parents separate and feel like they feel like they have the right amount of time. Or why you see, this is why, another reason why you see a lot of people in our generation not get married or go into those, what is it called, poly relationships, where they have multiple people that they can deal with, because one, a lot of them still fear that failure of marriage because they had to experience that reality as kids when they seen their parents. So for me, that's something that really stuck out. And also, with women being the one who's filing for a divorce, it kind of makes sense now in our society because the women's ceilings are a lot higher than they used to be. Before the woman's role was, as we were saying, Malcolm, was to stay home, take care of the kids, do all this. And now you see, especially with Black women, they're the most educated people in our country by far. So they're shooting for the stars, right? So if they feel like they don't have someone who match that, then they're going to get going and move on. So for real, it's just so interesting to see these numbers because, and just like anything, I would expect with experience you to get better, but the numbers don't lie. Experience in this case of divorce rate, the women are not with it, and they're respecting themselves, and they'll rather be by themselves than be with someone who doesn't add tremendous value to their life.
Definitely good, KG. I mean, you definitely you talked on a lot of good points, and even when you hit like the tolerance piece, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? Like once you go through something hard and traumatic, then if you come up with the BS again, you're not going to be as reluctant to move on and better yourself in life. But one thing that I read before in the book, The Way of the Superior Man, and they always talked about how in relationships there has to be a polarity, a polar opposite, right? Like you got to have somebody who's like the masculine and the feminine. And I think that, a lot of times for issues, or you see like what Mal mentioned, where he said a lot of people who are at the top of the chain or the top of the charts and work, a a lot of times they're single. And that's because if you have like two very, very strong people in a household, a lot of times there's no polar opposites between, where somebody can be the masculine, somebody can be the feminine, and then that way the relationship works. And the book mentioned that I guess the best way to look at it is in like homosexuality relationships. And if you or homosexual relationships, if you look at them, a lot of times there is a very strong person, and then a lot of times there's like a more feminine person as well. So it's always very interesting to look at that and understanding that, there has to be a polar opposite between the two. And I think another thing Malk talked about was, Malk, you talked about where you said that the gender roles, there really aren't any gender roles anymore. And I was listening to somebody on a forum, and they said that nowadays when it comes to men and women, it's so much different. Like back in the day when your grandfather was alive, like your grandfather had to go to work every day. He had to cut the grass. He had to pay the bills. He had to do everything. But grandma in the house, she took care of the kids. She washed clothes. She cleaned. She did a lot of those things. But nowadays, it's expected that the man, in addition to him taking care of the outside of the home, it's also expected that he has the mental time. He takes time to spend time with his family, or he does do the dishes, or he does clean the house and things like that. And in addition to that, on the opposite, when you look at the female, now there's an expectation of like, instead of in addition to you taking care of the kids and taking care of everything in the house, like, you also got to go to work and provide and pay for this bill and do different things like that. So I've always found that to be interesting between the two, and understanding like how gender roles really aren't in play anymore. And I wonder, and I kind of wonder if that does have anything to do with like the divorce rate and how it's 50-50 and how it continues to go up, because back in the day, there were gender roles. Men did this, women did that. But nowadays, it's a little bit more of a confusion between the two. But I've always found it to be interesting, and it kind of went along with your points that you made before, Mel.
What you got, Mace?
So first of all, I think what KG and KP and you said all kind of align. I think it's super interesting that when you get into a second marriage, I think you're right. Like you're not really ready for the BS. At that point, like you know what you want, you know what you don't want. But I do want to say I hope that people take the time to understand that as well after coming out of the first one. I know I can speak from experience. I'm currently divorced, and going into a new marriage or a new relationship has had me kind of like slow walking rather than just kind of like jumping all the way in. And I think finding a significant other or a partner that has a space where they're able to understand that, but you're also able to kind of meet them where they need to be met emotionally and mentally is like super important. Overall, I think everything I heard you say, Mal, sounds like communication. Like you have to be able to communicate with your significant other, right? Like you can't just not say anything and then it blows up later on, all right? Or like with boundaries and expectations, I think expectations should be clear, because if they're not clear, when you get into something, when it goes negative or when it goes not so good, then it kind of explodes or it implodes and the relationship becomes a space of contention rather than something that you can work through or grow through. When it comes to relationships, I think people have ideas from their family dynamics. They have ideas from what society tells them. They have ideas from what social media tells them things should look like. And we're at a space where, I mean, in reality, social media runs our every action and our every move, unless you're someone that's not on there. So taking that into account, understanding how important, like my relationship will not be like KG's. My relationship won't be like Just. My relationship won't be like Malk's. Like they could be similar, but I can't take on their relationship or the way they handle their relationship with their significant other the same exact way that I do with mine, or lack thereof. And I think that's just a space that we have to get in and understand that, what works for someone else's relationship doesn't always have to work for mine. And in reality, I think people show, I had a long talk with somebody the other day about this. I think people show on social media, as they should, they show the good, right? They show, you always see the good and, oh, there's never anything wrong, or that couple's always shucking and jiving. They always traveling. They're always doing this, always doing that. They never seem to be upset. And in reality, I think it goes back to what Malcolm said, like, you see the good, but that the good is because they've had the hard conversations and they continue to have the hard conversations behind closed doors, and they work through their issues. They work through their whatever they need to discuss, rather than going to outside places, or also rather than just kind of like showing it on Front Street for the world. So I think it all depends on like communication, expectations, and boundaries that you all should create prior to having a official relationship, but then also, you know, kind of refreshing and resetting while in that relationship.
Great points, Mace. I definitely agree with the aspect of communication. Um, that is one of the realities that I don't believe past generations did that well in, and that we're us as millennials, and I believe the generation behind us, we definitely see a value in that. Even if you see, like, you know, all of us are educators on this call, and we thought that we felt misunderstood or the need to have our perspective valued, but it's even heightened in the next generation coming up. Like, they claim a stake in the interaction in their space, that their voice is to be heard and to be considered. Now, they don't have, I don't want to say not much to bring to the table, you know, from the mindset that we were raised to have. Like, you a child, stay in a child's place. But I mean, we've equipped them with a mindset that their perspective matters. And I think that's important, because as they feel that to be true, they can maybe empathize with their partner or their boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance when they're taking that stake in that claim in the relationship also. So I think that's great. I wrote down a couple points as well. I just want to hit on them to make sure that I'm staying focused in my conversation. I also did highlight that millennials wait longer to get married, however, that they stay married longer. I think that's a great highlight. It does speak to the previous comments that you all made, that we were the children of the divorce wave, the norm of divorce. Where, you know, most of us were born in the 80s. We know what happened in the Black community in the 80s, 90s, KG, I see. But I mean, between, you know, failed marriages, failed relationships due to just a number of different societal issues or environmental issues in Black and brown communities, we've definitely been more apprehensive to stepping into marriage just because of feeling, or just because of emotion, or just because it seems to be the cool thing. I think a lot of us are making more of a conscious decision, a more calculated decision, and understanding that, hey, we do want to have a one and done experience when it comes to this marriage commitment, right? Us as millennials have also understood the effect of divorce on children, like you all have shared before. I myself, my parents actually were together 35 years and never were married. They were the longest standing relationship in my family. So growing up, I was opposed to marriage. I want to say over 90% of all the individuals, all the adults that I knew that were married, they were divorced. And I could say that clearly happened like maybe before middle school in my life. So for me, it was just a norm that, hey, look, you know, marriage is not on the table for me, but I think it did. I'm thankful that my relationship with my wife grew organically. We were definitely friends, and only friends before getting into a relationship. And you know, life experience is what changed my perspective on marriage and my relationship with God, and my relationship with my parents. As I got older, I could, you know, then begin to change my mindset on it. So I'm happy that as millennials are waiting longer to get married, and that's resulting in longer marriages, because it's more of a conscious decision. It's heartbreaking to me that at the average age of 30, individuals are experiencing their first divorce. There's enough that we go through in our 20s of identifying who we are, you know, what kind of adult we are, what type of friend we are, you know, where in the country we want to live, what does our career path look like. Then to add divorce to that, you know, it's not just the idea of the divorce, but all of us have been in relationships, and then the day after the relationship ends, there's a feeling that you feel in the pit of your stomach of loneliness, of confusion, of damn, what part did I play? What could I have done better, right? And to experience that at a time where all these other intersections are happening in your life, that's hurtful. That is hurtful, and it's not really a set way that we can go about divorce, where there's open air or open space for men at least to talk about how that affects them in a healthy way. You know, many times I think, you know, women definitely have their girls' nights. They have those times where girls come and provide comfort, and they provide a space to, you know, kind of dive into the relationship and see what is happening in the relationship. Whereas guys, we don't necessarily have that kind of practice. We have like, all right, man, you know, let me know if you need something, or man, you good, man. Just like pick yourself up. We're just gonna keep moving forward. You know, sometimes there's a norm where guys just kind of continue to, you know, date women without healing themselves first. And I think that is what actually, for me, plays a huge part in the rate of divorce increasing every time you get married after your first divorce. Because for me, while I haven't had the experience of divorce, I do take a look at human behavior, and I notice that many adults and many people in general don't actually review the role that they've played in situations that didn't turn out the way that they wanted them to be, whether it be divorce, relationship, being fired from jobs, friendships ending. You know, they're not necessarily taking time to reflect on the space or the effort that they gave or didn't give for that relationship not to be successful. And then I think they bring that into the next relationship with them. And then now we have a cycle of, well, you know, my past marriage, you know, it was ended because she did or he did, but never, you know, the accountability aspect, because with accountability comes the need for change. And I think change is so uncomfortable in a space when you're already vulnerable that it's a hard ask, at least for men, right? I did think it was interesting comments around gender roles, which is also, I know that is a large portion of the reason why I advocate for people to wait, right? And to stay in a relationship and to allow the relationship to grow organically as you grow organically. Yeah, agreed, TJ. I believe that in time we are definitely, as millennials, rewriting what gender roles actually look like, right? I think that there necessarily won't be very, very clear gender roles like the past, but I do think that some of the norms will shift, right? And we see that to be normal. There are more men who get in the kitchen and cook, because cooking is more about eating than it is about the role, right? Like I actually, you know, at least for many of us, well, all of us on the call, we're all college grads. We have met young ladies in college. We've all been in the same time and space where it's like, hey, look, we're both studying for exams. We're both, you know, have this huge deadline coming in. Of course, I'll go grab food for us, because food is actually like, it's not a point of contention. It's more of a source of energy. Like I see the work that you're putting in. I'm on the journey with you. This is not going to be a point of a conversation or creating a time and space of tension in our relationship. And I'm here to see what you're doing, right? It's something different if you're kicking your feet up, watching the game, got a beer on your stomach, and you don't want to contribute. You understand? Like that's an issue. But I think there's a norm within our generation where many of us have seen our friends of the opposite sex, or even, you know, people we've been in relationships with. We've seen their grind. We've seen their build up to the time and space where they are earners now. And we can respect the fact that, hey, look, you're not going to have the time to do what your mom or your grandma did. Like you're getting home sometimes later than me. Of course, I'll, you know, make sure that this X, Y, and Z is done. I'll make sure that things are orderly, because hey, look, maybe I'm not the best cook, and we can identify that, but I can support by prepping the food, right? I can make sure that the food is cleaned or cut up, or things are lined up in a way that, hey, it makes it easier for you to actually put the meal together, and it becomes more of a collaborative effort, and it's not just 100% on one individual. And I think when that becomes a reality, that becomes a point of contention. So finding a way to team and work collaboratively on things that happen on a daily basis in a relationship, I think that works. I'll give an example. I absolutely hate cleaning the bathtub. Absolutely hate it. Do I do it? Yeah, of course I do. But number one, it's just so uncomfortable. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's either you're gonna get your knees gonna be on the hard tile, or you're gonna be bent over, you're gonna be scrubbing. A lot of stuff is popping up in your face. And also, like, I use Ajax growing up. That stuff is terrible. Like, you understand? It's just a whole bunch of things. I got some traumatic events growing up. So long story short, me and my wife have found a happy medium. We're blessed enough. I grew up in an apartment my whole life. We're blessed enough to live in a place where we have 3 floors, right? And I have no problem, taking on the roles of like, hey, look, I'm sweeping every floor. I'm vacuuming every floor. I'll wipe down walls. I'll unload a dishwasher, load it up. You understand? I'm cutting grass. I'm doing X, Y, Z. But honey, I need you to hit these bathrooms. You understand? And to be honest with you, when you do like a time comparison, by the time I'm doing all of these things, we pretty much ending around the same time. You understand? And hey, look, it's not one person being responsible for it. Now, mind you, that's a very, very small thing. But, for someone having to be responsible totally for one aspect that both people contribute to is a point of contention. Like, I didn't dirty this house up by myself. You understand? Why should I be responsible for X, Y, Z? I'm not the only one that's hungry in this house. Why should I be the only one cooking, cleaning, food shopping, and preparing the food, and putting it away, and putting the dishes away after, and cleaning the kitchen up, right? This is where I think the areas of contention come in. Last point is, I think it was very, very important to bring up the influence of social media. And I think that winds up being an Achilles heel for many people in our generation and the generation behind us. Because comparison kills joy. Okay. Be completely honest with yourself, and take a step back and think about the emotions that you feel honestly when you scroll through your timeline and you see other people's relationships. You see other people on vacation. You see other people doing X, Y, Z things, whether it's what car they drive, what food they're eating, what they're doing this weekend for the 4th, right? And for many people, they feel, that whatever is their reality is inferior to what they're seeing on their timeline. And when you get these chemical reactions happening on a normal basis in your body, it makes it very, very hard to be happy, thankful, and feel blessed for the reality that you do have, right? Because like we know, social media is a highlight tape, right? We know it is many times the best experience that individuals are having, or at least the facade of it being a really, really good experience. So I just offer, I offer individuals to maybe do like a social media cleanse, man. See where you're at the end of a 3-month, 6-month, year break from social media. Trust me, you're going to be all right. You're going to survive. You're going to live. All of the super important information, people will still make sure that you know, right? Between group chats and people hopping on the phone and FaceTiming and Zooming, you will find out what the most important information is. But all of the fluff that winds up, killing the happiness that you have as an individual, or as a partner, or as a husband or wife, I think it'll be beneficial for you to just focus on you and yours, so that y'all can identify what makes you all happy and what works for your partnership or your relationship. because that's what winds up allowing your relationship to last, or at least have the opportunity to last. I guess that's something I'm thankful that me and my wife have a norm about. I'm definitely more, on Instagram or on social media than her. I'm more so like a scroller than a poster, right? But my lady she's just not into it. And I'm thankful for it, because I see the reality of women who are, heavily into social media, man. It really changes many of their personalities. It changes many of their expectations. And I think for women, I think it has more of a negative mental effect on them than men, because I don't want to say every woman, but most women who are getting attention are supermodels and superhuman individuals, where they've paid thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, to look like action figures and things of that sort. So I think it's a little bit more detrimental to women, but I do want to highlight that natural women are still winning, right? Like that by far is a huge area of oversight by many people on social media. So I appreciate y'all, definitely taking the time to listen to my points, but I wanted to bring those home and highlight the fact that we need to identify as young people what the culture and what the stance of marriage will look like now, and be intentional about that, so that the generations that come behind us have a better example of what marriage is and what it can be, and that it's not a fearful decision, because if we do it right, it will encourage them to do so. And we understand that, especially in the Black and brown community, marriage is a staple and a need for building generational wealth.
Can I piggyback real quick, Mo? I think, Just, I want to make sure that we touch on the piece and not let, I know you didn't gloss over, but I want to also address it, how you talked about that social media cleanse. I think that our generation specifically, and the one under us, gets so caught up in the flashy, the glamour, the glitz, the islands that people don't go to, or the islands that have the clearest water in the world, all these things that are amazing experiences. But I also think that it puts unrealistic expectations on people's current states, right? Okay, yes, that person went there, but did that person go there? Are their bills paid when they come back home? Are they staying on someone's couch? Are they, what I mean? I think that there are things that people don't really always take into account when it comes to what they see other people or other couples or other relationships kind of going through. And then there are people in reality, they just got it like that. And that's something that they work for 9 times out of 10. So, you have to respect that and do the work for it. But I wanted to say that personally, that's one thing I did last week. I always cleanse my social media. And I started getting to a point where I was like, oh, I'm starting following people that I know, I don't even know, or just people that I thought I wanted to follow. And I was like, you know what, this isn't helping me. So I just unfollowed people that I don't know, or people that weren't providing specific product or progress for me emotionally and mentally. And it changes your whole feed. And when you do that cleansing, you change your whole feed, you now are operating from a space of what you're allowing in your mind is all positive. It's not anything that's super wild, or it's not anything that's undrastic or unrealistic. In reality, I can go where I want to go, but I'm going to make the decision when I want to go there. I'm not going to allow social media or society to tell me, because everybody's going to Bora Bora, or everybody's going to Mexico, even though I'm going to Mexico later, but because everybody's going to Mexico, now you got to go to Mexico. That means you're the cool person if you do that. So I think that's super important for the generation, our generation, and the generation under us.
Because that's actually what I was going to say, Mace. Social media ain't the issue. You the issue, right? Who are you following? There's plenty of relationship therapists on social media. Plenty of book snippets or motivational videos, financial literacy videos, real estate videos, or whatever. Everything is there. It's just what's your diet. It's strictly your diet. right? And where are you? Like, I like looking at those big cribs I can't afford. I like looking at some people I follow, how they travel the world. I like looking at the dude that gave his wife this super crazy gift, right? Because I'm comfortable where I'm at, and it's like I want to see where I'm going, right? It may not look exactly like that, but I'm just over the regular stuff now, and that's also something too. I took a lot of notes too from this data and the feedback. It's like, yo, men gotta be better, and not just better, but like elite. Like if you just look at Game 7, right? All of us essentially, we make like 100 G's a year at the minimum, right? We got businesses, we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 11, 12 degrees, different experiences. But I know for a fact that not one of us feel like we're the man that our woman really wants us to be, right? Not in a disrespectful way or like nothing like throwing shade, but she sees something in us that we ain't reached yet, right? And like American overall numbers, like that's elite, like that's supremely elite. Like I know as some of y'all looking to maybe relocate and you're looking at like salaries, you're like, yo, like I can't I can't do it, you know, like it's gonna cut my income in like half, you know, like around the country, like collectively speaking, very, very few places are bringing in the bread like they're bringing in the bread here in the DMV. Another big one. Just under half of kids in America are growing up without a man in the crib, right? So even if you do raise a wonderful woman and she has it like all, but she's never seen how a woman treats a man, yo, it's going to be hit or miss. Like you can be the man doing everything right, but because you're not this mythical figure of the man she never had, then she leave. And then she run through all these other dudes, and then she see you later at 35, like, yo, can I come back? Like, yo, what happened when we was 22? You feel me? But you never had a man giving you like man feedback, right? Just how like a man really can't raise a girl or a girl can't really raise a man. Like it needs two. Like we were talking about this in the chat the other day. Like some of us, you know, got some things with kids, and the other parent is like, yo, like you can tell like there's no other version of me around because like you can't do that. You know, like a woman has to learn from a man things to look for from a man, you know, and a man got to learn from a woman things to look for from a woman. So by us not having both of those, a lot of our boys are growing up as men and don't know how to really be a man, you know, unless they have some super strong mentor or a coach or an uncle or something that stepped in. And women have no idea how to treat a man or be treated by a man. Because men got to be held accountable because we got to be better. But women, they keep choosing dudes who ain't it. You know? So something is up with your evaluation process. Just like May said, when he's divorced, he come back around, he's looking far more intentionally. And just like me, I'm basically divorced. I had a kid with a woman that I'm not with no more, you know? And I just wasn't with, and I'm still not with, like my son going through multiple different women along with me, you know? Like with T, she never even met Nas for like 6 months. I said, yo, y'all not meeting until I know that me and you, like, we in the mix, you know, until we're doing this. And then we talked about friends. Just mentioned that too. It's like, yo, we have a hard time just finding friends. So imagine with women, the kind of time they're having finding men. You know, like outside of this circle, who y'all see on these calls, I don't even really talk to nobody else, bro. Like, no disrespect to nobody, but I don't even talk to you. You know, like we still genuine friends. But like, yo, I see you when I see you, but we just on some different stuff. You know, like we not moving the same. You know, like if you're not on this call, I don't really have general conversation with you on a daily basis like I do with y'all. And then also with us, like every time after this call, the podcast, we do a call with each other. You know, like to check in, what's going on. Everybody been pressed for different reasons. You know, Just, you gotta do this. Make sure you gotta do this. Pizzle, KGG, get it together. And one thing we do not play with is if we're lacking for our women. Like you're gonna get pressed by everybody, you know. And we're just another unique circle in that way. But I too often hear like this is like the me post too, like how women they get advice from other women, who are not in a relationship, or they're in a relationship with a dude who can't hold a candle to the dude who's the issue in the relationship, or the man is going out with his homies and they promoting all the wrong stuff and not helping him be the man that he needs to be for the woman at home. So these are relationships too. Like your relationship with your friends plays a major role in your relationship with your spouse. And I think, like, of course, like if it's something personal, you gotta keep it personal. But I think a lot of things that are typically said to be held within a relationship, you gotta share with your homies, bro. Like, don't embarrass your girl. Like, put something that's just hers, but she can only help you with, like, she in the mix with you. Sometimes it takes that person outside of the circle who knows you at like the same high level to give you some advice on what you need to do better. Like, yeah, you've been in a relationship with her for 10 years, but I know you for 25 years, bro. I know you for 15 years before you even knew her name. Like, yo, you bluffing because you got this going on with your brother, and she's not going to know that. So your intimate relationship with your friends is very, very important, especially as men, because a lot of the fatherly feedback that all of us don't get now for various reasons, or we do get, comes from us, like on the call, because either our fathers ain't here, or we don't have the relationship, or we never met our father, or whatever the case may be. So, like, speaking for me personally, I just couldn't imagine, especially like a lot of y'all feedback to me has been like how to get better in my relationship. I don't know what I would have done or wouldn't have done if I wasn't able to communicate with y'all. Like, if it was just me and I didn't really have no friends to lean on who knows. So all in all, I'm saying, I think our message is you gotta heal first, right? And I know, Mace, you probably know this the most from your experience as a counselor, but a lot of relationships that I know about, the relationship is fractured because one person fractured first, or one or both people entered the relationship fractured, thinking that the other person was going to mend those wounds, right? But I also don't believe like you have to be 100% healed. You have to be 100% committed to healing, because I do believe like you'll meet a person, a man or a woman, who will be your inspiration to finally fight those battles that you didn't fight, right? So boom, you go to therapy and you have that conversation. Yo, I've been using drugs and I met Tiffany. Tiffany is super dope. She ain't mess with me no more unless I get over this drug habit. I'm here. And like Tiffany inspired Jerome or whatever, Jim, to go heal. And he continues to go because of Tiffany. Or vice versa. Tiffany, y'all, I've been blowing all my money on all these trips because all my friends going to Aruba. So I want to go to Aruba too. And then I wanted this bag. But now I met Tony, and Tony's like, yo, like, you got all these gifts, but you blowing all your bread. And now she's financially literate, whatever the case may be. So one person can ignite that process. You don't have to be healed. I just believe you have to be truly 100% committed to healing so you can get there and y'all can find what y'all find in your relationship. So Mace, give me some feedback on that, and then we'll start closing.
I think you kind of hit it on the head, and it's super important for us to be aware that we're in a space of always like continual growth, right? Like we won't ever just be 100% and be good, and that things will always continue to change when it comes to understanding your significant other, but also understanding yourself. So although you go through something, and Jess, I know that 30 mark, you kind of said it like it hit home for you a lot, but in reality, 30 is where you have now lived an experience or a lifestyle where you kind of know what you like and what you don't like. And this is your next step of growth. So now I would almost say that maybe 30 is the actual benchmark for understanding who you are as an individual. And you're still going to grow by the time 35 comes, and then things will change in 40 and so on and so on. But being aware of how growth is important, but growth should not stunt your relationship if you're in it for the right reasons. So I think that's super important. And I think, Malk, you hit it on the head when you talked about being aware of your own issues and then having someone to address it with, some type of support system. I know I can also be transparent. I have a pretty good support system out of you all, but I also don't feel comfortable. I did not feel comfortable at first going to that support system because I was a Black man, and we're taught by society, Black men, you suck it up, like Jess said, you keep it moving and you work through it and you don't say anything, but that in the long run will then affect me mentally and emotionally. So I now utilize that and I address that with you all. and with them, and I take back, I take what I learned from you all, give it to them, and so on and so forth. So just being aware of who's in your circle, who's there to support you, and then being mindful of who is there to maybe they need to be cut off, and that's okay. That happens. That's life.
Anybody else can jump in before we close?
Yeah, great points, Mace. I urge anyone in earshot of this conversation to take a look at the influence of their circles, right? Whether it be friends, cousins that they hang around, other family members, coworkers, and really ask yourself, do they represent the individual that you want to become in the future in any area of your life or in all areas of your life, right? Because we know the impact of our environment. In several books and then several successful people share that, hey, look, if you show me your 5 closest friends, I'll show you your future. And the reality of it is that sometimes it's very, very hard to look at those people through a critical lens or an unbiased lens because of the time that you spent, because of the history that you have with this person, or the fact that they're family, right? I got to give kudos. I got to give respect. I got to give love to Malcolm because Malcolm is the person that helped me to see my family as people, right? And when I was able to see my family as people, I could go through this process that I'm urging you all to do. And it wasn't necessarily something that I didn't want to do. It's just something I didn't even understand or conceptualize because when you have relationships with your family, you look at them through the title and the role that they play in your life. You don't look at them as individuals or as adults, right? And sometimes that just having that small shift will allow you to be able to say, hey, look, this person adds so much more value than I'm giving them credit for. They just so happen to have this title. Or, hey, look, I know that they have this title. And, environment tells me that, hey, look, I should spend a lot of time with this person with this title. But I know now that I see them objectively, this is not the best for me in my future because I've made a decision where I want to be and the type of individual I want to become. And I think, for many people, especially if you're living in poverty, there is a mindset and there's a norm of not creating relationships outside of your core, especially once you get to a certain age, right? 25, 30, 35 years old. I mean, there's a norm if you're living in poverty, like family is the all be it. You don't ever go against your family. We already see all of the family over everything, XYZ, and I just want to highlight this sometimes, this is my biggest urge to children. This is hard. I don't want to turn the conversation, but I do want to share this. All right. Most of us support children that are growing up in poverty. All right. If our children could find a time, space, and understanding that, hey, look, one of the only things that my family has shown that they're capable of doing is consistently be poor. Right now, don't get me wrong. Please don't take that, as a soundbite because that's a very, very small perspective. But one thing that is true is that, if for generations your family has not, moved forward economically, the one thing that you can definitely be honest with yourself about is that, hey, look, my family can only teach me to be poor because that's the only thing that they've accomplished themselves. If you can make that shift and understand that, hey, look, that is a way to see that, hey, look, there is not a culture of analyzing our decisions, making adjustments to become better, and then actually doing it and then rinse and recycle that process so that the realities become better. Then you become a little bit more open to other individuals that you see having that cycle, that norm in either themselves, their relationship, or their families. So we have to really make sure that we're looking at our family through an objective lens, because if we keep this perspective that is like, hey, look, this is my family, this is who I'm always going to be loyal to, and I'm going to spend the most time with, you're intentionally making the decision to have the outcome that they've already shown you that is their best. You understand? Nobody chooses to grow up and stay in poverty. Nobody chooses to grow up and go through several divorces. However, their mindset and the norms that they operate in are what create that outcome. So, please take it with a grain of salt, but also listen to it objectively, right? We're all old enough to really understand and to be able to take a step back and say, hey, look, there's a norm of divorce in my family. There's a norm of substance abuse. There's a norm of poverty. There's a norm of nobody getting to retirement age and being comfortable in the way that this system is, set up to be able to, hey, look, I should have much more than my financial responsibilities at the end of the month if I've stuck at a job 30, 40 years and I've consistently grown as an individual. When you bought your house in your 30s, your mortgage should represent what mortgages looked like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. There's no way that your retirement money shouldn't meet your financial needs if we're just going to talk about systematic, realities. And I'm not saying that that's the way to go about things, but what I am saying is that there are processes that there are normal processes that exist in families that keep them poor, keep them divorcing, keep them unhealthy, and keep them in the time and space that they're in, despite everything else growing around us at a rapid pace here in America. So I hope that gives the individuals an opportunity to review, reassess, and to just be honest of the realities of the people that we're spending most of our time with. And for the ones that are, continuously progressing, and none of us are where we are going to end up at. But if we're going to be honest, we can see that people's efforts that we're closest to, we can make a calculated guess on what their future is going to hold, right? Just like we do as educators with children. You're around them long enough, you see that A, B, and C equals this, whether it's their thought process, their doing, and actions and things of that sort. So.
Good points, Jess. You gonna say something, Pizzle?
Yeah, I mean, I'll hop in real quick. I think you make very good points as well, Jess. And I think it is, birds of a feather flock together, right? And it is very interesting when you see people where, if you watch your father abusing your mother, sometimes people become abusive in damn selves. Sorry for cussing for anybody watching, but it is very interesting that a lot of times you act out the same things or you mimic the same things that you have the foundation of or that you've seen in your past. So I think that is very crucial that you have to be able to identify and say like, yo, like this is not normal or that I'm going to get as far as they got if I continue to watch them and use them as an example. So I think that, being able to identify yourself, identify the situation that you're in, whether or not relationship, friendships, people that you're listening to in general, and then making that shift from there, I think it's one way to combat that. But that was a good point, Jeff.
Can I make one like very elementary comment? When you grow up in poverty, like there's this norm of people living on top of each other, right? You got 6, 7, 8 people living in a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment. And if you do that generation after generation, that becomes normal. And then people find comfort in it. I grew up in a big family. There's always people around, it's hard for me to be by myself, XYZ, things of that sort, right? But as you get older and you realize habits of, successful people is that they take time to be alone, to learn themselves, to analyze their decisions, to, revisit experiences. In fact, even sometimes mentally experience them all over again so that they can take a look at where they could have made better decisions, better statements, been more mindful of other individuals, things of that sort, right? Just in that norm of poor people living on top of each other doesn't create the space to reflect, to regroup, to analyze, and try a new approach, because you're constantly being forced to deal with all of these other perspectives that are usually replicating, right? You have the same mindset that somehow the adults in the building or in, you know, if you live in an apartment building or you live in an apartment complex or projects, there's somehow a very similar mindset amongst the adults that now children don't question, right? Anything is normal to a child, whether you grow up on a boat in the middle of the ocean, that's normal to them because that's all that they know, or you grow up in project housing where there's 10 people in a 2-bedroom apartment, or you grow up in America's biggest home in the middle of wherever with the best ocean view. All that is normal to children. But I've learned, at least in my example, did I grow up poor? Absolutely not. Are there many, many perspectives and mindsets that replicate that of poor people? Yes, right. And it really did affect my decisions moving forward. And I'll share that time and space is important to have as a young person, and to understand that should be a norm for young people growing up because of all the different influences that they have. And I'll say from my experience, I didn't have my own bedroom until I was 22 years old. And I didn't realize that wasn't, I'm not gonna say that wasn't okay, because people do the best that they can, right? But if the goal is to create an individual that can be independent, I think it is important for that individual to be able to have their own time and space, to be able to show that they can be okay being alone, they can be responsible when being alone, and that they can be responsible for a space and be able to get the help to do that while you're building that responsibility or that norm, right? How that has affected me is that me and my wife don't have any children yet, but we made sure when we purchased our first home that our child or children will have their own space if nothing changes. And I say so much to say that had such a big impact on me that when my family transitioned from being in an apartment after me being 20 years old to then moving into a house, being in a house didn't feel right. There was this form of conditioning that I had that made me now feel like bigger spaces, having your own space was unnatural, right? When in fact, that is such a healthy norm. People being able to go into their own separate spaces, identifying who they are, revisit themselves and their experiences. And I just push individuals who don't have that reality, who are living on top of each other, to make that a goal, right? That is something that can offer more of more mental health than you believe. That it can be more of a support to your mental health and your well-being than you believe.
No, that's a big one, Jess. And like all in all, like you got to do the work, because also too, like we too old for you to be saying I ain't have a dad growing up, I've never seen him, or my mom was on. Yo, so what, bro? So what? Is everybody done been through something? Wow, like all of the information is here: counseling, therapy, books, YouTubes, meetups, trips, YouTube, Zoom meetings, like everything is here. You just have to do the work. Like you can get like a cyber parent. Like there's parenting courses. Like your parent did this, you should do that, right? That's not the most ideal. You want your real parent to be there. But eventually it gets to the point, like if you ever want to be fully available to another person, including yourself, you got to do the work. You got to do the work. Like there's people that look like, all right, these are the people that are around me. This is their mentality. I'll pick it up, right? Or when Jess got to that room, like, dang, I feel weird that I got my own room. Let me figure out what that is. Is that anxiety? Is that imposter syndrome or some other thing? Oh, all right. Well, that just tells me I can get my bread up. When I buy a crib for my son and daughter who's not even here yet, they're going to have their own room. Boom, end the problem. Like, it's not that quick, but you have to go through it. Like that's, especially in our community, everything is somebody else's fault. Everything's somebody else's fault. We still, something from 150 years ago is our reason that we ain't doing what we got to do today. Like facts are facts, but like, yo, this is where we are. this is where we are, and that's a whole nother conversation too. But I don't know. Interesting data. The women are leaving. What's this comment say? That's real. First time in my pops, I was at 27. Instead of using it for excuse, I use it for motivation not to be like him. Respect, Mike. Yeah, like everything is about your perspective. You know, like this is my situation. I can fit into the situation, or I can be that dude or that woman who breaks it. Well, I guess the message for today is men gotta be better in whatever form or fashion. Everybody has to heal, come into the relationship fully committed to healing. And if you're not ready, you're not ready. Don't let social media or your grandma or your mom who have relationships with no Tinder, no DMs, not even cell phones, none of that available. Don't trip off them. You know, get yourself together, and when you make that commitment, understand what it is, because I mean, 70% is not really a commitment anymore. You know, clearly that's what the data says. But if you want to be in that 30%, make sure it's something you prepare for. Anybody else want to say something before we sign off?
Sometimes I think one of the ways to create lasting relationships is while you're in the process of healing, making sure that you're open and honest with your friends about that process so they can help keep you accountable, right? Like sometimes, especially for men, it's good that I've identified what I'm struggling with. I'm going to therapy, but I'm not sharing it with my closest, my close circle of people, no matter who they are, because the opportunity to relapse or to go back to who you were, and even though it may not be healthy, it's familiar and it's comfortable. So I just offer anybody who is moved by this conversation, and if your goal is to be married and you don't have good examples or role models of marriage, cancel your Netflix subscription and get a part of a online community where people have successful marriages. Hop on those Zooms or on those calls with them on the weekends instead of going out to the bar and doing XYZ things. I'll offer that because not having the right people around you is not really an excuse nowadays, because we have access to people around the world at the click of a button online. Right now, it may take some time to figure that out, which one is best for you. But I'll give an example that, one community that I became a part of was because of trading stocks. Now, they have constant communication on Zoom and chat rooms and things of that sort. But, I wound up hopping on there last night on Saturday night at 11 p.m. thinking that it was going to be about a stock conversation, when it's actually wound up turning into an intervention for a young man who is in his 30s, who works for a very, very, world-known company, and he's feeling the pressures of the reality of working there, and he's, willing to step away from it and sacrifice what could potentially be the future of his own well-being and the future of whatever businesses he wants to build. But everyone is spending time on that Saturday evening at 11 p.m. feeding him perspective, feeding him, encouragement, saying and committing to the fact that they will reach out to him on a daily basis. Now, people are living all over the country on this call. There's East Coast to West Coast. There's an individual living in London, another individual living in Guam. Understand? And because this person is paying a Netflix subscription every month, now they have access to people who don't replicate maybe the people within arm's reach. So understand that is the reality that we sit in, and the blessing that we have being at this time and space, in 2021, and even in the past, for us to really, overcome any of those issues that are holding us back from becoming our best selves.
Appreciate it, Josh. Anybody else? All right. See y'all next week. Peace out.